In the previous video, I've shown you that we can now run our tests locally. In this video, I'm going to explain how you can run your tests automatically on GitHub whenever you push something. In our .github directory, there's a workflow directory that already contains two workflows. One to fix decoding style, I'm going to explain that in a next video, and one to run the tests. Let's take a look. This YAML file will configure a workflow on GitHub. And before heading over to GitHub, let's take a look at what is in this file. First, we define when this workflow should run. And this workflow will run whenever we push some new code ourselves or whenever a pull request comes in. And this is very handy because when a pull request comes in, the GitHub UI will already show if the tests of that pull request will fail or not. I'm going to show you that in a bit. Next, there is a job section. And this workflow only has one job, to run our tests. And there is a bit of setup here, and then the actual steps that should be performed. But let's talk about the configuration part here first. The most important part here is the matrix. And the matrix isn't some simulation run by computers, but a way of running your tests using a combination of variables. In OS, we have a couple of operating systems that GitHub supports. Our tests should run on the latest version of Ubuntu and on the latest version of Windows. We are going to run our tests for PHP 8, and we are going to use one of these stability options. These stability options will be passed to Composer. So here you see matrix stability. Let's discuss what prefer lowest and prefer stable is. If you pass prefer stable to Composer, then the latest versions of all packages will be used. With prefer lowest, Composer will select the lowest available version number for your constraint. So imagine your package has a dependency on another package, and that other package has versions 1.0 and 1.1. Then with prefer stable, 1.1 will be used. And with prefer stable, Composer will pull in version 1.0 of that package. We are going to run our tests for prefer lowest and prefer stable to know for sure that our package works with all versions of the dependencies that we use. And by explaining this, I've also hinted at what happens with the matrix. What this matrix will do is that it will run all the steps here for each combination it can make with the values inside of the matrix. So we are going to run the test on Ubuntu using PHP 8 prefer lowest. We are going to run the test Ubuntu PHP 8 prefer stable, and then the same combinations with Windows. If your package supports multiple PHP versions, then you can just add a supported PHP version here. And then for that PHP versions, the test will run for all those combinations again. But let's stick to PHP 8 only for now. Next up, we have a name here, and this is the name that will be displayed next to a run on GitHub. And you can see that we use the values in our matrix. Now let's take a look at what GitHub does whenever a test run is run. First, we are going to check out the code. This will clone the repository onto a container at GitHub where the tests will be run. Next, we are going to install PHP on that container, and we are going to install the PHP version that we defined in our matrix. Next, we are going to set up the problem matchers. This will basically give you better output on the GitHub action whenever a test starts failing. Then onto that container, we are going to run Composer update, and we are going to give it one of the stability flags that we defined here in our matrix. And next, we are going to execute the tests. Let's go to GitHub and take a look in the Actions tab. And right now, there's nothing here. I already cleaned up previous flows. For your repository, there already may some runs here. Okay, let's trigger a run by changing something in our repository. And let's make a dummy change here to our test. It can convert kilograms to pounds correctly. It's a little bit of a dummy change just to trigger GitHub Actions. And let's push that to GitHub and see what happens. And you can see that a run is being started right now. Oh, I should say that there are two runs being started. This one is for fixing code styling issues, and this is for running the test. And you can see here that we are running the test 4 times for each combination in our matrix. And for Ubuntu, these tests pass, and in a bit they will finish for Windows as well. But let's already click here and take a look inside of this job. Here you can see the output for each step in our workflow. And if I open up execute tests, then we see the output of pest here. And our tests ran fine on Windows as well. Let's take a look at how it looks like when we make a mistake in our tests. So let's commit and push this and head back. We have a new test run here, and I'm going to speed the video up so you don't have to wait. And you can see here that one of the tests failed. Let's take a look. And sure enough, in the output of execute tests, we see that our test failed. You should also notice that the other test runs with other combinations of the matrix have been cancelled. They were cancelled because one run failed. And this is just a way of speeding up the completion of an action. There's no need for GitHub to waste resources on something that is already failing. Now you can modify this behavior. If we take a look at our workflow, there is an option called fail fast true. And this one says that all jobs can be cancelled whenever one combination of the matrix fails. If you always want to run all combinations, regardless of a failing combination, you can set this to false, and then all combinations will stay running regardless of a failing one. But in most cases, you just want to put this to true. Let's also fix our test here. And this should be back to green, and it is. Fix tests, like that. Okay, let's now add support for another PHP version. I'm going to also support PHP 7.4 here. And of course, I should also hint that in my composer.json. Like that. I run our test just to make sure that everything is working correctly. And I'm going to commit add support for PHP 7.4. And let's push that to GitHub. Let's take a look. The Actions tab. Here are our tests. And you can see that we will also now run the tests for PHP 7.4. And here you can see that the tests failed for PHP 7.4, even though they were running correctly on my machine. Let's take a look at the output. Here we see that we have a syntax error because promoted properties aren't supported in PHP 7.4. Let's head back to PHP Storm and head over to our class. Here PHP Storm also warns us about this problem. Constructor property promotion is only allowed since PHP 7.8. Let's fix this. We're going to replace it with a traditional property like that. And let's push these changes to GitHub. Support PHP 7.4. And by pushing these changes, GitHub will perform the tests for PHP 7.4 and PHP 8 again. I think GitHub running the tests for various PHP versions is very cool. Even though all of the tests ran correctly on my machine, GitHub still found a bug because I'm only running PHP 8 on my local machine. But using GitHub Actions, I can just run the test for any PHP version that I want. Let's take a look if everything's okay. The tests are still running for Windows, but for Ubuntu we can already see that for PHP 7.4 it's okay. At the moment of recording this, PHP 8.1 isn't released yet, but a release candidate of PHP 8.1 is already available. I can use that to test if my package is ready for PHP 8.1. So let's add, and I don't think I need to add 8.1 because it's already covered by this. So let's push this, run tests for PHP 8.1. Let's go to GitHub, take a look at our tests. And now our tests are being run with even more combinations. Let's see if they all pass. And sure enough, everything passed for each combination of our matrix. So we now know for sure that our code works on these 3 PHP versions. Okay, so we've seen that the tests are being run whenever we push some code. Now let's see what it looks like on a pull request. I'm going to simulate a pull request by somebody else. just by creating another branch and making a pull request out of that. I'm going to name this branch fix code. Let's change something here. Let's commit this with this really works, lol. Let's push it to the branch fix code and create a pull request out of that. This really works, lol. That's a good title for this pull request. So yeah, I've created a pull request myself here, but this will look the same when somebody else sends in a pull request for your repository. You can see that right here on the pull request, the output of all the tests can be seen, and it runs pretty fast. We can already see in this output that our test did fail with this change. If we take a look again here at the details, at execute tests, we see that the test did not run correctly, and we can conclude that this change isn't a good one. So let's close up this PR. Computer says no, thanks anyway. And close it. I also don't need that branch anymore. I think it's pretty neat that GitHub shows the output on tests right on a pull request. I've now immediately closed this PR, but in a real-world scenario, you would probably ask the contributor of your package to fix either the functionality itself or the tests. That your package doesn't only work on your machine, but on all other machines as well. So I can highly recommend writing a quality test suite and running your actions on GitHub Actions or another kind of CI.